Ancient Egypt is one of those topics people think that they really truly understand. The pyramids, pharaohs, mummies, gods with animal heads. It feels familiar, kind of almost overexposed. And yet somehow we still manage to misunderstand it. Most of the time, Egypt gets framed as mysterious, mystical, or unknowable, like it was powered by secrets that we'll never understand. Aliens, lost knowledge, magic, curses. I mean, you know what it's all about. But the more you actually look at ancient Egypt, the less mysterious it really becomes. Not because it's simple, but because it was organized, right? Egypt was not held together by mystery. It was held together by systems. And that's the part that tends to get skipped. Egypt functioned because it could measure, it could track and manage things at scale, like land, grain, labor, time, authority. After the Nile flooded every year, fields had to be remeasured and reassigned. Crops had to be stored and redistributed. Labor had to be organized seasonally. That requires immense planning, in administration, bureaucracy. It's not pretty, but it is very effective. That's also why Egypt lasted as long as it did. 3,000 years. That's not luck. It's not brilliance either. It's durability. And that brings us to like the pyramids. The pyramids are usually treated like the main mystery. How were they built? Who built them? Why are they so damn big? But the question people jump to is usually slavery, right? That's where things get messy. I mean, we don't have any modern records. We don't have payrolls or contracts or written explanations that fit neatly into modern categories. But what we do have is archaeology, worker settlements, food production sites, and skeletal remains with healed injuries. Infrastructure designed to support large, rotating labor forces over very long periods of time. So that points to state organized labor, not a disposable slave population being worked to death. So that doesn't mean that the work was voluntary in the way we'd understand it today. So it wasn't really coercion, or coercion existed. Power was absolute, but the state needed workers alive, functional, and returning season after season. So it tells us something important, that the pyramids weren't built by expendable people. They were built by a system capable of mobilizing itself. And that system didn't exist just for pyramids. It wasn't just building the pyramids or building the grand scales. The pyramids themselves weren't just tombs either. I mean, if burial was the only goal, the size just doesn't make sense. These monuments were designed to dominate the landscape. They were meant to be seen all the time. Like, hey, look at me. They communicated permanence in a world where most things were fragile, where most empires fell apart. They said, this authority is stable, this order is legitimate, and this system is not going anywhere. We are here to stay. That message mattered so much more to the living than it did to the dead. So religion played a huge role in reinforcing all of that. In Egypt, religion wasn't separate from politics. It was part of it. It wasn't about personal belief in the modern sense. It was infrastructure. The concept of ma'at, which is balance and order. I mean, it framed everything. When things went right, the system was working. When things went wrong, well, it wasn't leadership failure. It was, like cosmic imbalance. Blame the gods. The gods did this. That framing protected authority. It redirected blame and it stabilized the power. It made obedience feel natural instead of forced. So temples weren't just religious centers, they were kind of economic ones as well. Priests weren't just spiritual leaders, they were administrators, they were landholders, and they were power brokers. Religion was not decoration, on the whole system. It was the system because that's how they kept control. And for everyday ordinary Egyptians, daily life was shaped less by awe and more by routine. So more people lived in villages. They farmed. They paid grain taxes. They worked when labor was required. Writing wasn't really much of an art form. It was more of accounting. Scribes didn't build monuments. They made the empire legible to itself. And that's how control actually worked. Not constant violence and not constant fear, but routine, predictability. Paperwork, or the ancient equivalent of it, was very important. That's why Egypt didn't collapse like bam right away. It Egypt didn't fall in flames or in spectacles. It kind of slowly lost the ability to maintain balance. Authority decentralized, administration weakened, external pressures increased. Trade routes shifted, and the system that they love so much started to fray at the edges. And once it couldn't absorb stress anymore, it didn't really disappear. It was just kind of absorbed. That's how most civilizations actually end. I mean, not with a bang, not with drama, not with flames and fire, but more with exhaustion. Ancient Egypt wasn't magic, but it was engineered. And that doesn't make it less impressive. In fact, if anything, it kind of makes it more unsettling. Because the real lesson isn't about pyramids or gods. It's more about how long a system can last when it actually works, and how quietly it fades when it stops working.